Did I want a flat white? No, I don't. But thank you very much for the offer. I appreciate it's important to fuel ourselves before we kick off, but we are going to kick off. Let's get this show on the road. Whenever this committee gather, we acknowledge and pay respects to the traditional Aboriginal people of the land on which we gather. We acknowledge all their descendants. We also acknowledge the many Aboriginal people from other regions, as well as Torres Strait and South Sea Islander people who now live in the local area and have made an important contribution to our community. Welcome committee members and also Councillor Gates and Councillor Hamill, who are joining us as guests today. It's great to have you with us. Actually, no. Councillor Gates, you're acting mayor. Right. Well, thank you for joining us. We will kick this show off. I don't think we have any leaves of absence or other things. We don't have an apologies. Councillor Fowler is not on this committee. I know that she offered an apology at another committee. Let's kick off with a confirmation of the minutes then. Can I get a mover to confirm the minutes from the last meeting? Councillor Martin, seconded. Councillor Marshall. Anyone want to speak against that? All right, all those in favour? That motion is carried. Awesome. Is there any conflict of interest declarations today? No one has died? Still here? Great. Awesome. Well, we've got a presentation about cemeteries, so I thought that might be a conflict of interest. The forward planning schedule is starred. Can I get a mover for the forward planning schedule? Councillor Curtis, Councillor Doran. So Councillor Curtis has moved it, Councillor Doran has seconded it. All those in favour? Forward planning schedule is carried. We're going to kick off with the reports and presentations. So we've got a presentation today about some enhancements to the Gold Coast Disaster and Emergency Dashboard and the Gold Coast Alerts program, the subscription service we have. So I'll hand over to Alex and her team to tell us all about it.
Thank you, Chair. And we have Mark Ryan, General Manager for Disaster and Emergency Management and Local Disaster Coordinator, to present this item today.
Thank you, Chair, and Happy New Year. It's great to be back in committee for 2025 and councillors to provide you an update on a proposed change to our disaster and emergency management dashboard and alerts section of our business. So from a background, the Gold Coast is, it's not new that we're facing a significant severe weather events that impact our community. Over the last 5 years, we've had bushfire, we've had flooding, severe winds, storms, all within our hazard profile. So on behalf of our local disaster management group, and we have a very active LDMG, the city provides public information and warnings to the community. So that's both prior to an event and during an event and after an event. So one of the key updates in this enhancement is both education but also warnings during events. The Australian warning systems is about 2 years in now, and thankfully it provides a national approach. Prior to the AWS, every state, in some cases every city, had different standards for warnings, different icons, different colours of warning, different language. So we've aligned our work to that AWS about 12 months ago, and what this enhancement does is takes that further in an automated approach. In 2022, the Inspector General looked into the events of the February-March rainfall event, which we saw significant rainfall, I'm sure you'll recall, particularly around the southern parts and central parts of the city. One of the learnings from that event was public information and warnings, and there was a large examination around the emergency alert section. And so the emergency alert, separate to what we're discussing today, is the push system that sets from cell towers. So we request that through the state, and the state ultimately during that period we had Lismore happening, Gold Coast, Scenic Rim, Logan. There was competition for messaging, and Brisbane City Council, and that system was delayed, and that's what the system found. So the Inspector General suggested that local governments might invest into localised subscription-based systems which serve as an alert system before we get to emergency alert. In the past year, we've sent 134,000 SMS notifications in 2024, and as of December, we had 14,167 opt-in subscribers, and that's continuing to grow as we continue our community education program across the city. So that becomes the base for this enhancement and how we take this to the next level. The Gold Coast Disaster and Emergency Dashboard provides community information to prepare, respond and recover from disasters, and this is an enhancement to both of those products is the proposal. So our drivers to change. The climate is changing with more intense, rapid onset, short duration rainfall events. So that's what the State of the Climate report in 2024 has told us. And we're starting to see that on a micro version. Back in December, we saw 2 events where we saw over 100 mil of rain fall over Mudgeeraba in one section and in the northern part of the city. So that's, I guess, a micro version of that. Excuse me. But when you then look at something bigger term, if you look at the Lismore event where that effectively required meteorologists to rescale their products because they just couldn't measure that amount of rain and what the impact was. So we're starting to see that. So how we've responded to that is this round of enhancements to our dashboard and to our alert system. There is a desire for timely, relevant, locally targeted public information and warnings. There's no question around that. And that was loud and clear in the community of Eleanor and others told us loud and clear and told the Inspector General that that is the desire, and that's internationally. We're starting to see that around some of the events in Spain and indeed some of the learnings already out of the Los Angeles fire situation. So the Officer Inspector General, as I said, wanted local governments to look at opt-in messaging and pre-formatted messagings and polygons in relation to flooding. So at the moment, it's very much a manual process, and what we're hoping that this system does is automates that based on some really robust methodology, which I'll walk you through this morning. Our current process of drafting and sending Gold Coast Alert is manual. So if we were to hit a trigger right now, for example, with the storm that's currently impacting Coolangatta and up through Tullabudgera, our duty officer would be sitting out at Ashmore drawing a polygon around the likely impact of that gauge and then using a predetermined message to get that out. The LDMG is required to warn the community under the Disaster Management Act, and that's what these enhancements are designed to do. So the design of this enhancement is effectively to have a 24/7 first monitoring system for the city in the ability to issue that first warning where we see that. So across the Gold Coast, there's 58 flood warning stations. They're owned by Bureau of Meteorology, the City, Seqwater and Maritime Safety Queensland. All of that data is consumed by the Bureau of Meteorology. And of that, 38 of those are classified around minor, moderate and major floods, and 14 are unclassified. So some of the unclassified ones are for the ones particularly around monitoring of our dams. So they don't need to be classified. They're actually simply levels. And then we trigger, so for example, around Lotus Creek, etc., it then triggers a minor alert as the water comes down the catchment. So I'm just going to walk you through the methodology of our enhancements. So from a flood intelligence perspective, we've looked at the city plan, the flood studies, the gauge classifications, modelling, what the best practice is, the flood extent relative to the gauge level and professional judgment. So we've worked really closely with city planning and regulation, natural hazards planning to understand what is it that it's telling us around, what is the flood studies telling us. As part of that, we've liaised really heavily with Brisbane City Council and Moreton Bay Regional Council, who have actually done this journey ahead of us. And what we've been able to do is take there's a really good collaborative approach around local governments. We've taken all of their lessons, and what we think we've done is we've produced the next generation of this warning. So and I'll walk you through that, particularly around the geolocation, where the other local governments is more of a flat pack. It sends a warning and it just gives a generic message. What ours will be able to do is actually bring you down to the map where you're standing and then give you the decision points around that. We've looked at risk management, so we've looked at all of our data sets around populations at risk, hospital aged care, residential and commercial properties, transport, critical information, critical infrastructure, I should say, other infrastructure, and again, professional judgment. So with that professional judgment I'm talking about, we started with an LDMG working group. So that comprised of the State Emergency Service, transport, fire and rescue, city, various areas of city, and then we also then looked at the lessons around what the February-March event did, what has previous events done, and that's where we've applied our professional judgment around that methodology. From an emergency management, we've looked at our legislative duty to warn under the Disaster Management Act, and that's clear around what we need to do. What are the learnings from other states? What is the expectations of communities around warnings, messaging, emergency management plans, things like shelter in place versus evacuation timings, routes, risk appetite, and then we've put a reasonable person test and a professional judgment again once into that. We've gone out and we've done some stakeholder engagement, as I said, with the state. So the state, with the reforms, have now created the State Disaster Management Command with Queensland Police Service. We've made sure all of our messaging is compliant with that, and we've discussed and refined by the Local Disaster Management Committee around the flood warning areas. From a governance perspective, we've briefed the LDMG in December around the endorsement of methodology, which they were happy with, the consultation with myself, and then under the Act around warnings, I've provided approval around the warning messages themselves. And then from an implementation point of view, flood extents for the gauge trigger level, lots of the debate was around that. So where a trigger level is, what is it that we need to do around flood warning, considering all of that other methodology? What is our AWS warning telling us? There's the 3 levels, which I'll walk you through shortly. What is it to link back to the disaster dashboard, and what do we want to show the community? The development, testing, and what we've been doing over the last 8 weeks is running this system in the background. So where we've had those events in December, what we saw was a duty officer at 1 o'clock in the morning drawing polygons over the bottom of Currumbin Valley. In the background, we were watching what this system was doing. It would have activated the system based on the flood warning and basically issued the alert automatically to that community once it was reached. From a community information and education perspective, we've updated in the background, proposed to go live around the Gold Coast flood warning areas, which I'll walk you through. So at the moment, we've got understand your local hazards. So there's 11 storyboards that effectively allow the community to click on bushfire, go into the storyboard. It's ArcGIS compliant and reaches into and looks where you are within the community. This is how I prepare for bushfire. We've got that cyclone, severe storm, pandemic, and then we've even got a history of disasters around the Gold Coast for new communities. As part of this enhancement, we're looking at moving this across to our city ArcGIS away from the current provider that provides the dashboard, and that's just more of just a governance perspective and gives us total control over the content and when we want to change that. But we're then proposing with this recommendation to include information around the Gold Coast flood warning areas. What's key to that flood warning area education is, at particularly moderate and major, there's a really clear messaging in there around that this may never happen in your lifetime. But what it does allow is for the community to consider that, as we then link it back to the CSIRO report, that if we do get these intents, that at least the community is informed around what it is that they might do to stay safe and to plan for decisions for their families. So a quick run through what are the enhancements. So the Gold Coast Alerts, Guardian IMS and dashboard will be further integrated. So at the moment, as I said, it will be an automated process where a trigger will be received by a gauge. The gauge will interpret that information and then we'll send that out. This is the first layer, as I said. This is designed particularly around quick issuing of warnings while we're then ramping up the Local Disaster Coordination Centre. So what it doesn't replace is the sophistication in the work that Natural Hazards Planning does when we stand up the LDCC and they use their system called FEDS. That uses far more sophisticated software that actually then considers things like we're able to consider whether there's stormwater blocked or whether there's debris coming down. So we can put all those inputs in, and then that then refines this warning area that will then enhance that warning. It does monitor the river and rainfall gauges 24/7. So that's the big game changer. At the moment, what would happen at 2 o'clock in the morning, if one of the gauges go off, it sends a text message to the duty officer. The duty officer responds, gets up, starts drawing polygons and then issuing a warning. What that will do is it'll prepare this warning and say, are we going to send this out? Yes, and off it goes. Our flood warning areas are created around flood warning stations. So our flood warning stations, so our gauges are doing that, and then we've taken a bubble around that based on the methodology that I walked you through. It does have the issue, as I said, ability to automate messages, including flood extents, local area, community consequence information. That's what this is really about, is making decisions around which road do I drive on. So in the case that where you will receive this alert, you'll be able to click a hyperlink. It will geolocate you if you've got location services on as part of your settings, and you'll be able to see real-time road closures, real-time flood warnings around north, south, east of you to make actually really good decisions, but then it will also things like direct you to your nearest evacuation centre if the city's established evacuation centres. So if the city in the LDCC, we open an evacuation centre at Nerang, about 2 minutes later on the dashboard when I click on it, it'll show me I don't really want to drive south, I want to drive north towards that Nerang evacuation centre. That one's open, I'm actually able to provide assistance or get assistance there.
Mark, while we're just on that, you touched on people who have activated the geolocation option on their phone. What is the outcome for a person who hasn't? activated the geolocation on their site.
Certainly, Chair. So they will click on the link and it will take them to the warning area. It just simply won't geolocate them. So the blue bubble, if you think of Google Maps, it won't show the blue bubble where they are, but it'll take them to the warning.
So
all of that other stuff will be visible.
Doesn't exclude them from accessing the information.
Absolutely
it
not.
Just minimises the information available to them.
Correct. Yeah, so with the blue bubble, you'll be able to, similar with Google Maps, zoom in to where you are. With this particular one, you could still zoom in knowing where you are. It just won't simply show you where you are.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
And it does leverage existing systems, so we've not recreated warning systems here. So all of this information is still being consumed from the Bureau of Meteorology, from those 4 owners of the gauges, interpreting that data. And then the other big enhancement that councillors, you'll recall, was during the Christmas storms, we did have some performance issues with this Gold Coast alert systems with some delayed messaging. I think I reported back at our update late last year that we've resolved those, and we're quite satisfied that we've done that through testing. What this now does with the enhancement is it gives us a performance monitoring and reporting. So the moment that warning goes out, we're able to get a report really quickly around how many got delivered, how many were successful, how many were unsuccessful to phones through information through the carriers. So that's what a flood warning area looks like. So this is in the test environment. So you can see that there's 2 flood warning areas that are there based on the gauge. And then if that was the alert that went out, if you were geolocated or not, you would simply have that. You'd be able to tap on the tab to the right-hand side, and that will then provide the warning system message, or sorry, the AWS system that gives you your calls to action. Take action now. It's orange if it's moderate, and yellow if it's minor, which I'll show slide. So again, zooming back into the left-hand side, so the flood warning area, the grey shading that you can see there, and the corresponding flood warning station will be visible. So that's what it'll show up, and it'll either be the 3 colours. It will be yellow, it'll be orange or red, depending on the call to action. The important part about this as well is that the community will be able to go before an event. So as part of setting up their flood plan or the disaster plan, these flood warning areas will be visible to them so they can see what they could anticipate if a minor warning occurred. The level of flooding, again, has been informed by previous events, the city plan, that professional judgment, and say this is likely what might look like at a minor level. This is what likely might happen at moderate and likely might happen at a major. So allowing the community to have that education piece, and that's what we see as being a big focus should council endorse this to go live this year, is around actually having those conversations, having it up on a screen at our community events out there, getting people to have a look and play with it to actually start planning, because we know the best community outcomes is that when community understand what to do with the warning when they receive it, as opposed to trying to work it out when they receive it.
So on the right-hand graph shows a series of threshold lines, and there's 2 road levels in there. One road level, I think, at 2.9 and one at 3.1 or something like that. Which road level, what does that mean? So the graph so I think it's a graph on the right-hand side. There's a blue line at the bottom, which I'm assuming is the creek gauge.
Yes.
And then there's threshold lines above, dotted lines above, 2 of which say road level 2.9, and the other one says road level 3.1. Help me understand what that means.
Yes, so I understand, Chair, that this is a trigger between the AHD level, so the Australian Height Datum level, and so there is a mismatch at the moment, which we're trying to work with the BOM. We've actually got another level with the BOM where, for example, we have some gauges at they do it at the AHD level, and they do it at the surface level. So there is
they've got 2 systems that they're using.
So there are 2 systems. There is a national system, so the city and natural hazards, we use AHD. The BOM is generally moving towards AHD. But what the triggered alert does is what we've done is aligned at least the trigger that if the minor, so for example, there's one of the things is at 46 metres versus 0.8 of a metre. So that's the difference between that the trigger and the call to action to the community is still the same. Yeah. So we are still working. We've actually got an upcoming meeting with the BOM. There's only about 4 or 5 gauges that this still relates to.
Right.
That we're still working around that.
And so I'm just so I'm very clear, this reminds me of the system we've used for a decade in Mudgeeraba called Floodwatch. So there's just a community-driven website where the Austinville Causeway has got a gauge on it. The community draw the information from the BOM, and they have a map just like this that shows Austinville residents when the blue line hits the road level, you know that the road is flooded. So because it's the only way in or out, it's a really great service. Is that what the broader community can now expect from every one of our flood gauges on bridges in the city?
Not exactly, no. So that work continues. So some of the enhancement. So with the actual particular road issue on this one, I stand corrected on this one, Councillor. I was confused about the AHD around the other one I was talking about. Where you've got the road levels there, what they relate to is then the totem to the left. So this is actually around the Currumbin Creek Road near Tomwin Mountain Road is 3.1, and Currumbin Creek Road near Pigabeen Road is the 2.9. So I stand corrected on that particular point.
Okay, so there's two road levels because there's two roads captured in the totem.
Correct. The AHD issue relates to the other 4 gauges that we're working through at the moment, which is the difference between the flood level that we have on the flood intelligence system. But as far as the data, availability around that right-hand side,
yes,
all gauges around the minor, moderate and major level, depending on road interpretation, are available now to the community.
So the broader community can now jump on this dashboard, follow the links to see the catchment area, which is the left-hand graphic.
Correct.
They can see the totem that you're calling a totem, which tells you where the minor, moderate and major flooding issue, and they can also see a captured in a graph where the blue line hitting the road can show you when there is technically water over the road according to the gauge, which might not be perfect because sometimes gauges don't operate in exact, but it can give people a really clear picture of whether a road near them is actually underwater or not. Am I reading that correctly?
That's correct. And not only not only during the event, Chair, what they can do is before that, plan for that. And that's the real key part of this, is that all of this information, so where you see it available in grey up there now, that's in the education mode. So it's not activated. So what people can do is go, okay, I'm within one of these flood warning areas. Here is the totem pole to me understanding around what does that look like as far as metres. Where am I going to get the warning? So I'm going to get the warning in this particular case at 2.4 metres. And then I know that then the next warning, which is going to be at 3.3, both of those roads will be inundated. Inundated.
So you can,
make those choices around. So it probably at the yellow alert, I'm going to make a decision to leave now. So that's the call to action, or is it to prepare now, or am I actually well prepared that I can stay in place for 3 days because I've got my emergency kit and my
follow-up question. Each of these information pages, and I'm hoping that they're unique URLs. Each time you click to a different link, they're unique. So a member of that community, rather than having to search every time for the whole thing, can actually save the URL of the area that relates to them, and they can just put it in their favourites. So they can quickly turn their phone on or their computer on and click to the bridge that's most relevant to them.
So this particular one you wouldn't be able to do because it's a portal, but it's reading data that's already publicly available from the BOM. So that might be something that we could look at around putting a hyperlink link in to each one of those. Because like this is an interactive portal, for want of a better term, so it doesn't use unique URLs.
Yeah, it could have a I don't know, like in their favourites. This is our local bridge, and this is when I can see when it's. That'd be really handy.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, as we continue to come back to your bridges comment as well, as we continue to build our intelligence around, so not all bridges are covered by flood warnings. I think that's important to note. But those ones that actually have flood warning stations, most definitely you do that. But I'm happy to look at that hyperlink because I think that is important. But with the interactive, it doesn't bounce around via URLs.
It's in a portal.
You're correct.
Yeah, okay,
and it's integrating that information. So the totem pole, and as I said, and it'll show, as I said, 24 hours worth of information. So the idea of this portal is indeed that, Chair, is to bring all of that bureau meteorology information, put an emergency management lens around and look at community consequence around that. And this is the final slide before happy to take questions, Chair, is they're the 3 levels of warnings under the Australian warning system. So it's about monitoring conditions at the yellow level, preparing now, and then take action now. One of the questions that we often get when we're out talking with our community is am I expecting it to go yellow, then orange, then red? And our clear message back to the community is sometimes not. So where we have these intense rainfall event, it's possible where we do have that intense rainfall that it's potentially could go from no warning straight to either orange or red, and that's potential. And we saw that in the Tullabudgera one in early December, where the first alert actually went to watch and act because of the intense rainfall that we see in those types of areas. So that's the big one around this, as well as the community education that we plan on rolling out and continuing to rolling out. I think we did 78 events last year. We plan on continuing to increase that, and just talking to people around local risk within their area and how this can do. Thank you, Chair.
That's great. Any questions? Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question on, obviously when we're communicating the dashboard to community, there's often the bomb, you also visit the bomb. So I'm just interested how, with the messaging, does this kind of replace the bomb, or we're still asking the community to check the bomb as well? Just interested in your response.
Yeah, no, thank you. So through the Chair, the bomb issues regional level information. So for example, today we received a warning this morning saying that a storm is coming from northern New South Wales. It's likely to impact Springbrook, Mudgera Bar by 9:25. I think was the warning from memory this morning. So what that does is gives us a regional picture. What this does is it brings it down to the community level. So we use the same, for example, language that New South Wales SES would use as the issuing authority in New South Wales. So we've got things going both at the border. That's through the AWS. So the idea around AWS is localised, specific warning information for our community with a call to action. The Bureau provides regional level forecasting information, if that helps.
Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Mark. The automated messages, especially as it relates to the flood gauges, as you in the example you gave, it could happen, 2 o'clock in the morning, you could get the alert. There's also some information within the report here that talks about a safeguard to intercept automatic warnings if the intelligence isn't there to support the warning. Could you talk about, so the community knows that if we do get one of those automatic messages at a time where we're not expecting it, or we weren't aware that it might happen, that there is a safeguard to ensure that we can trust that it's real and that it's genuine?
Yeah, absolutely. Through the Chair, what I would say is no warning system is fail-safe. We saw that in LA with 10 million people getting an evacuation warning, and I don't provide judgment on that. I'm sure everyone was doing the best they could. But we do have the ability to run this system in auto mode or manual mode. So where we were, for example, in the case where the local disaster coordination centre was at stand-up, we would put that back into manual mode. So,
because you've got staff on ground.
Correct. The auto mode, I'm not going to provide assurance, Chair, that we will never issue a false warning, but what it would be is a warning that would go out based on a warning on intel that we would then react very quickly to redact, versus a warning not going out at all. So that's the design of the system, is to release first and then we'll redact. But there is an ability, and what I would hope is that we're doing an uplift at the moment in our duty officer system, where if these triggers, well before these triggers are being reached, we would have a duty officer now doing what we call active monitoring, which is, it might be from home, it might be from Ashmore, but they'll be actually sitting there watching there and anticipating these warnings, so they have the ability to stop it if it was to go out. But the default will always be to warn if the intel suggests and then correct, versus not warn at all.
So just to clarify on Councillor Doran's question, it's more often than not that we'll be in manual mode as opposed to auto mode. Is that a fair comment?
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Just to follow up on the gauges as well, can you talk to the maintenance of the infrastructure and the devices to give us some comfort that they are monitored and in good repair, so as to again inform good data for the DMU to be able to make these assessments?
Through the Chair, a fantastic question and a timely one. So the federal government have announced recently that they're going to take over the entire flood network in Australia, including the gauges, and provide that intel still through to stakeholders. Queensland's the first state to do so, and the city's already in active engagement with the Bureau of Meteorology as part of the initial phase that the Gold Coast will be included in South East Queensland. That will provide us a consistent level, but we can't give consistent levels when we don't have control over ownership, when we only have the city gauges. So the city gauges have a pretty robust maintenance regime, but given that there's 3 other owners, I couldn't comment on their maintenance regime. What I can say is that the future state is going to be that the federal government will be maintaining the gauge network across the entire country,
including our city gauges.
Correct, Chair.
So that they will effectively take ownership of our city gauges and be responsible for their operation and maintenance.
That's correct, Chair.
All right. So my question is actually more practical. Firstly, how much, or if any, and what type of feedback did we get from people about the existing alert system? Was there any feedback from customers who are already our existing subscribers?
Yeah, we do receive anecdotal evidence from subscribers when we go to the community. We did hear the community loud and clear during the Christmas storm around the delays in the messaging, and that feedback was taken and in fact put within the recovery plan as a bespoke item for us to fix. And as I said, I'm quite happy that we've got to the bottom of what was causing that. I think if I talk probably nationally and globally, Chair, there's an absolute expectation. We saw the events in Spain and others where the community want to know early, so they then can make the best choices for their family. What we're trying to do with this product is capture not only during an event. We know that the research shows that the best outcomes for families and for communities is when they know what to do when that warning arrives, and that's the piece of work that sits behind this really sophisticated enhancement, is then changing community behaviour, which is something that we'd like to do this year, is continue to do that. And I don't say that we're starting that journey. That's already occurring, and we're seeing positive ways. Even when we talk to people around, have you got an emergency kit? Yes, I have. What does it look like? So we're actually asking deeper questions each time when we're out with the community to understand whether they've just got a kit or whether they actually understand when the triggers are to then grab that kit, depart. Who's departing? Is it the whole family, or is it a couple of people staying behind?
Got it. Yeah. Over the last couple of weeks, I've had people obviously watching the television and seeing the fires in LA and expressing concern to us about our plan. It's evident that this kind of subscriber service is going to help with peace of mind for a lot of residents who maybe aren't sure about what systems we've got in place to help them be prepared. How do you actually subscribe? So how do you actually do it? If you don't mind me, can you walk us through it just on the screen?
On the screen?
Yeah, could we go to the screen that has the dashboard, and can you just show us where we go on the screen to do it? So people can actually, we're on video right now, people might be watching.
Absolutely, yeah. If we can just go and do a Google search for Gold Coast dashboard, that would be...
Let's do it. Let's do it live. This wasn't planned. Sorry, Mark. I thought it was a good idea. Let's get it on camera.
Absolutely, Chair.
It looks good to me. There it is. Gold Coast dashboard. Disclaimer. Yeah, we agree.
And then the first tab you'll see there on the left, subscribe to Gold Coast Alerts.
Say again. It's great. So you just enter your information, yeah?
You just enter your... So you basically walk through, you enter your information.
Chair? Chambers support, love it. This is as easy as it is to get automatic alerts to your disaster dashboard. And so what you told us today, Mark, is that when you put this information in and you put your mobile in, some of the alerts that you'll get will be geolocated to where your phone is if your geolocation service is turned on.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. You'll see as we go through the sign-up process, you can make a choice to either receive warnings just within your area or for the entire city. If you're interested, if you've got a business in the north and you've got a residence in the south, you're able to do the entire city, and then effectively where the flood warning area has been predetermined, if you're within that predetermined area, you'll receive that warning. If you decide to do alerts for the entire city every time a flood warning area, or indeed a polygon, because we will do other polygons. This is just for the flood side of the things. We obviously do all hazards.
Just making sure we're not a robot. Here we are. You're in trouble. Gosh. Is that a bus there? Is it really a bus? I don't know. Here we are. Oh, we're in trouble. Maybe we're doing too random. Oh, gosh. It's definitely important to set enough time to get through the capture.
So you'll see the mandatory there, and then the second one is for all city alerts was the second option there. So,
so you can have a mandatory section, and you can also opt into whole of city updates as well.
So from there, within the next 5 minutes, you'll get a validation email just to make sure that that's okay. You sign up, and then effectively, if a flood warning area was to activate in the next 5 minutes, you'd start getting the alerts. So you'd be getting it by both email and by text.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm glad we've captured that on film, so anyone can snip that out of their YouTube video. Councillor Hamel, you had a question.
Mark, I'm interested. So, we have several sections of the city where we have the river as the border, and then have one or two local government authorities on the other side of the river. So those automatic alerts, are they only to our residents, or are they going to end up on the other side of the river, and vice versa? If Logan sends one out for the Logan River, does it come to our side of the river?
Through the chair, fantastic question. Thank you, councillor. So it would require the resident of Logan to sign into our system and our side to sign into their system. That's the current state. We know that the National Emergency Management Agency have committed to a national warning system in the next 18 months, and we're in engagement with the state around what does that look like. It'll be our system feeding into a national system is what we hope for and what we're advocating for, which would allow a more national approach. But at the moment, we do have, I believe it's around 1,100 non-city people signed up. So people around the border, or people that have got a business within the Gold Coast that have signed up. So out of the 14-odd thousand, there's about 1,000 that are non-city based people.
So their address is based outside our local government area, but they've subscribed to our updates with some special locations. Obviously, the geolocation service won't get them if they're registered outside our local government area. Is that right? Okay, cool. Great.
Yep. So any issue is that if they were to sign up to the entire city one, to the ones where we have the borders, particularly the North Council, where it's quite often, as you'd be aware, we get a lot more lead time around that, around the warning time, around the Logan, Albert. We do that versus the highly reactive catchments in the south. So that's where our focus of the initial part of flood enhancements have been. But as I said, it's absolutely. In fact, it's by the guidelines. If we were to go to an emergency alert, which we've done in the past on the Logan and Albert, on the Currumbin, anything close to New South Wales, we're actually required to notify the other local government, which is what we do and what we did in Christmas. For example, I remember speaking quite late on New Year's Eve to our counterpart in Scenic Rim when we were both looking at issuing a warning for Springbrook and also for Tambourine. So we do notify manually to the local governments, but unless the community are signed up to each other's alerts, they wouldn't receive that automatically.
Thank you.
Real good. Councillor Martin, you had a question?
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, this is warning and alerts, but currently this morning we've had some wild weather on the southern Gold Coast, and we're obviously pushing out the messaging around how, if you see an issue, how to report it. So obviously, we have the city app and we can report a problem, but I just wonder, is there perhaps a link through from the dashboard where they're checking for warnings, but also if they're spotting issue, how to link through and report either fallen trees or power lines and things like that?
Through the chair, thank you for the question, and it was certainly something that we scoped as part of these enhancements about a two-way reporting tool. Wasn't able to be landed on this particular enhancement, but it's certainly within our view as to what we want to achieve in the next set. It was definitely considered.
Can we provide just a standard hyperlink to the report a problem section of the website from the dashboard?
So the dashboard and the city app don't link. They're two different, and we've looked at that, and there's some limitations around the city app being able to issue AWS warnings. So that's something that we're working with Service Gold Coast, and we've had some discussions around. What we can deploy is a form. It's a really simple. So during an event, if there is a particular area, for example, if we were to sit there and say, we understand that there's damage around Elanora, what we can actually is deploy a polygon around Elanora and deploy a very quick one-click form that allows the community to provide intelligence, upload a picture and come back. So it's a process that we can do. It's not automated as part of these enhancements.
Right. So currently when you're using a device and you're on the City of Gold Coast website, I'm pretty sure you can report a problem could we provide just a hyperlink from our dashboard to our website for the problem to be done?
Be more than happy to look at that, Chair, and come back to you.
Awesome.
I couldn't see why not
I just think
practically.
Councillor Martin's comment is actually really good. We actually don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Let the dashboard be the dashboard, but at least link someone here with one of these coloured tabs. If you've got a problem, you can report a problem and bang, it just takes you straight to the page of the council website where you can report a problem. I think that'd be a really easy and seamless solution that, you know, eventually we can integrate it, but for now...
I would have thought so. I'm happy to come back and confirm that, Chair.
It's a good tip.
Yeah, I think so, because I literally just had to push out a notification around, we've had some wild weather and fallen trees and just, you know, the options that they can do. So, yeah, I agree. With just a simple click through to either the app download or the city report a problem splash page without, you know, I know this is the primary alert area, but perhaps if it's on this page would be a good addition.
Absolutely, and through the Chair, we have obviously strong links with customer contact when we're activated, and they're feeding us that data that's coming in anyway, so it seems a logical way to push that, so I'm happy to come back and confirm that that's
great. That's the end of the presentation. No one other questions? Did anyone want to move the recommendation? Councillor Martin? Councillor Castro will second that. Councillor Martin, did you want to say a few words about the dashboard and the use subscriber alerts?
Just thank you very much for the presentation. Fantastic for the city's proactive in this space. I mean, timely this morning, so I think Gold Coast has had some wild weather. So, you know, it seems that subscriber number, you know, a concerted effort to push that so people are subscribed is really important. Thanks for the tutorial, so people can watch that video. I think that's really good. And thank you very much. Happy to move.
Councillor Marshall, did you want to speak against it? No, you don't want to say anything? No? All right. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Thanks, Alex. We're shifting across to a different team now. We've got Jodie Fielding and Kate McLeod to chat about cemeteries. This presentation is part of the commitment that I made to new councillors to give a snapshot of all of the different operational areas governed by the committee, and this forms one of those more general presentations about the cemetery service in the city and some of the work that's been done up till now, and also some of the strategic planning moving forward. So I'll hand over to Jodie.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to welcome Kate McLeod, our General Manager of Communities, and Chris Stockley, our Coordinator of Cemeteries, to give you an overview of the cemetery service we provide to the city.
Good morning. My name is Chris Stockley. I am the Coordinator of Cemetery Services. I have been with the city for just over 1 year now. I'm here today to give you an insight into the service, some of our challenges, highlighting some areas of best practice further afield, and more importantly, opportunities we have in front of us as we strive to enhance the Gold Coast way of life. Or should I say, the Gold Coast end of life.
That's a good pun.
Thank you.
There's going to be some dad jokes. I'm just warning everyone. It is definitely my kind of joke. You didn't subscribe to that alert, Councillor Doran. All right, sorry, Chris.
Pictured here is Alberton Cemetery. Within the wrought iron enclosure, middle of the screen, resides Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry is the city's earliest known and recorded burial. This occurred on the 18th of August, 1860. This year marks 165 years of continued cemetery service offering to the city's residents and the greater community. As a matter of interest, fences are both for security and aesthetics. Historically, fences were used to deter grave robbers and animals from digging in the graves. The fence also marks the location of loved ones for family visiting. It is also a sign of respect and love with hidden symbolism. And you'll see the grave at the forefront has hearts, symbolising the family's love for the deceased. A day in the life of the service. So what does the service actually do? We manage queries such as selection of graves for pre-need. This is families that are, and individuals that are planning in advance, at need. Families who have experienced a often unplanned loss. Memorialisation, headstones, plaques, scheduling of funerals and services. The frequent call for help from the public. I don't know where mum and dad are. Location advice and assistance in finding their specific grave. The service is responsible to ensure the sites and the right location for burials. Legal requirements, record keeping, mandatory reporting for every burial service delivery. Digging the graves, correct depth and width, as no two graves are the same. Setting up the site and making a comfortable location for the family to say their farewells. Packing down after the funerals and making the cemetery safe for everyone visiting. Each grave requires regular ongoing inspection and also site-specific reactive maintenance. Managing and maintaining grounds and facilities, similar to everyone's homes, mowing, edging, hedging, cleaning, all just on a larger scale, with consideration of workplace health and safety and the added grief associated with the use of the grave. The funeral director portion at the cemetery commences when they arrive to a grave that the service has set up. They perform the ceremony and leave. We, the service, do the rest. All things going well, the combined team effort is an average of 30 hours per burial for our staff. We all know how often things go to plan. Pictured here is the Upper Coomera Cemetery. Council is under no formal obligation to provide this service. However, it is common practice for councils to provide cemetery services across Australia. This initially resulted from community and church cemeteries passing their responsibility on to the local authority. The city provides interment services to over 500 families per year. We do this as a responsibility to public health, community need, and accessibility of interment services. Council is the only supplier of public graves in the city. Formerly known as pauper graves, these are shared graves for people without means. Whilst this has been a relatively quiet offering over the last decade, there is a growing need as the cost of living crisis is impacting the funeral sector, with the burden of unexpected deaths and costs associated affecting families. Council offers a financially accessible service, with the private for-profit sector considerably higher. Nationwide, there is a lack of affordable cemetery and interment service providers. We have 8 cemeteries across the city. Additionally, there are 2 private cemetery suppliers. We are the largest provider of cemetery services in the city. Cemeteries historically developed near original camps and villages. Their location is important in marking early non-Indigenous settlement in Queensland. Sadly, not every council division is fortunate enough to have a cemetery asset. Cemeteries tell the story of the residents and their contribution to society. The good times and the hardships are recorded in the memorials or simply the lack of them. In the city, a single standard grave may accommodate 2 burials. If you can imagine a bunk bed, we bury one on top of another as per industry standard. we have just under 22,000 burials, both bodily and ashes, across all city cemeteries. We have a total of 32 hectares of cemetery land. The council service provision is delivered by a small staff with immense knowledge across the complex end-of-life and death care provision. Changes in population from predominantly Christian faith to a diverse multicultural blend has meant we have had to develop and grow our service delivery to accommodate a different and new need. Expectation from the community is council will provide burial and interment services. Whilst Christian-based religious segregation has declined in our cemeteries, growing non-Christian faith groups expect dedicated areas respecting their particular beliefs and customs. As an example of this complexity, Muslim sites located at both Southport General and Coomera cemeteries are oriented towards Mecca. The deceased are buried in cloth instead of coffin. The community gets physically into the grave to position the body. This limits the grave to a single depth and must be wider than standard, resulting in additional workplace health and safety practices our team have had to implement. The single depth burial also places additional demand on our space. Consecrated Jewish graves within the Southport General Cemetery must be independent of other areas, and again, single depth only. For some reason, if we dig a grave for a burial and we can't use it, it must be filled in and never used again. Traditionally, both Muslim and Jewish graves Traditionally, Muslim and Jewish groups have very little time after death to complete the burial. Some require burial within just a few hours. No more than a few days after death. Both communities also expect to backfill the graves by hand. The Upper Coomera Cemetery has been adopted by the Hmong community of northern New South Wales and Brisbane regions. The beliefs of this community is that they should not be buried close to home. This community also uses 2 graves per body burial, as the grave is dug to an angle considered spiritually fortunate in the afterlife, if you can imagine feng shui. And whilst it is not a faith requirement, we do have a growing community need of natural burial. Allerton Cemetery has the Gold Coast's only natural burial area. With increasing interest, we are looking to expand this service into other suitable locations. More than the families of the deceased are our stakeholders. However, they are at the centre of everything we do. We meet and discuss services with faith-based groups, community groups, funeral directors, complementary service providers, and stonemasons. Pictured is the Southport Lawn Cemetery. I took the 2023 picture in my first week with council, and the 24 picture just a few weeks ago. The picture demonstrates one of our improvements, rolling of graves. This is a process to remove unsightly mounds, eliminate potential and real hazards. It also has the added benefit of improving the visitor experience. This has been delivered across all 8 of our cemetery locations. The grave set up for burial. The city has invested in shade shelters, chairs, additional safety equipment to create a more comfortable graveside experience for families in mourning, again, delivered across all our locations. Pre-installed headstones. In new lawn areas at Mudgee Bar and Pimpamar Cemeteries, Council's purchasing capacity has allowed the city to deliver cost savings to the community at a time of emotional stress and financial burden. We have also been able to deliver a deceased search on the council webpage. This is available for families 24/7 to look up their family history or search the whereabouts of their loved ones. Pictured here, we've got Southport Lawn Cemetery. Our challenges are shared with other cemetery service providers across Australia and internationally. These are the top three. Staffing. It is difficult to attract new staff and retain staff, especially in a cemetery. This, however, is not limited to the cemetery sector. Our team of 7 supports over 500 families per year who have experienced a death, plus people making inquiries on general matters, memorials, or their own future need in one of our cemeteries. Space. Availability of suitable land. Generally, the land allocated to cemeteries is not suitable for other purposes and often has additional challenges, such as terrain, underground conditions, and accessibility. These generally make the service delivery and cost to provide the service more expensive. Land availability and affordability is impacting private investment for additional cemetery space. Changing demands on the service. With different cultural practices emerging in our growing communities, the service needs to react and deliver, ensuring workplace health and safety is met, culture is respected, and traditions continued. Pictured here is the new portion of the Mudgee Bar Cemetery. The standard practice for cemeteries across Australia is to have burial space to accommodate the need for the next 30 years. The city is not there yet. The last time we had a cemeteries forward plan was 2019. We have worked through some of the implementations, including Southport Lawn and Southport General Cemeteries regeneration. Mudgee Bar Cemetery expansion into the adjoining property to create additional burial space, Pimpamar Cemetery expansion, and securing land at Nerang Cemetery for future purposes. There is a need to explore options for the future. Further afield, cemetery provision is being reimagined to create inclusive community spaces. By combining active transport, green space, and community cemeteries, the vision aims to create environments that encourage physical activity, foster community connections, and promote ecological health. Such integration not only enhances the cemetery's role as a space for remembrance and reflection, but also as a cherished community asset that supports well-being and engagement. Council holds 10 hectares of land near Pimpamar Cemetery for a future cemetery location. We are really fortunate that the majority is koala habitat, and this gives Council a unique opportunity to incorporate conservation of natural habitat and green space to complement our future cemetery planning. We need to explore options for future Gold Coast cemeteries, such as expanding our natural burial offering into more locations, and Council, like most cemetery service providers, are watching the early exploration with interest of natural organic reduction, also known as body composting, currently legalised in 13 states of America, with research and testing commencing in Victoria last year. It is an exciting development in death care in Australia. Through the chair, any questions?
Does anyone have any questions about cemeteries? Councillor Curtis.
Thank you so much. That was really, really fascinating. I really enjoyed that presentation. It's something that we tend to not discuss in Western culture, so to have that presented was really, really great. I had some questions about so there's a lack of interest in the private sector to invest in this space, but I noted that we are a lot lower in fees than the private sector, which means that is this one of the ones where we resolve to not apply the competitive neutrality requirement if we're so much lower than the private sector?
That's a good question. To you, Kate.
Through the chair, yes, there has been consideration of a fee uplift previously, and council's chosen not to apply that to the cost of interment services historically.
Can you make any comment, Kate, on the level of service that people can expect from a council community service burial versus a commercial experience?
I'll pass that one to my learned colleague.
The community expects no difference. They apply the lens that it's the same, and quite often people mistake our service with the private sector as well.
So my recollection, having a cemetery in my area, there are certain processes in my cemetery, in Mudgeeraba Cemetery, that private outlets who provide the same service charge a fee for certain things, whereas we actually don't allow it. And the example I'd give is the way that someone might remember their loved ones by putting trinkets or things around that, and we limit that because of it being a public space and some of the restrictions around that. My understanding is that in a private setting, some of those things can be delivered for a fee, or a more premium service can be provided. Is that true? Am I reading that correctly, or are we just having the same rules as every other cemetery that charges double the amount?
Pretty much the same rules apply to all cemeteries. Trinkets, mementos, just little items that are left at cemeteries are issues for us. They get caught in mowers.
Of course.
They are trip hazards. We do experience those complications. The private sector have zero tolerance for it, so they remove it. We as council are more tolerant of their need to memorialise and leave items and mementos on graves. Yeah. So we do apply a limit, and we routinely have to go through and clean up. It's not a nice time, but it certainly is something that must be maintained.
That's great. All right. Did anyone have any other questions? Great. So earlier today, or maybe yesterday, Councillor Patterson sent an email to committee members in relation to an incident that occurred at Southport Cemetery. Just wanted to clarify, just on the record, is it fair to say that you've responded directly to Councillor Patterson about that matter? It doesn't need to be aired in this committee, but I just wanted to check that we'd dealt with that.
Through the chair, yes.
Yeah, great, awesome. And just to clarify the context of that issue, in heavy rainfall events on hillsides, or sometimes there's movement of dirt around, and a newly formed grave is susceptible to the same stormwater drainage and drainage issues that happen in any place, and sometimes we have shifting dirt. And would it be fair to say that our cemetery team are pretty quick to kind of manage that when we have rainfall events?
Yes, we do. obviously our first priority is health and safety.
Of course.
So we move quickly to ensure the safety of the cemeteries. Then our next priority is certainly burying those deceased that have an immediate need for our service. Then we perform our reactive maintenance on the site. So we don't plan the weather, as we're seeing today. Rain will come through, so we have to get ready to clean up the cemeteries tomorrow as a result of the weather.
Yep, great. So every time there's a heavy rainfall event, it's kind of all hands on deck from the cemetery team to try and make sure that the space is both safe and maintained to a standard that people expect, remembering their loved ones.
Most certainly.
Yeah. Just finally, the newest cemetery in the city, I understand, is Mudgeeraba, not too far from over. Could you give us some update on what its capacity is and when we can expect it to be open?
We are anticipating the opening of the Mudgeeraba Cemetery expansion in the next few weeks. We're just waiting on handover from construction and maintenance. There were just a few issues regarding a working gate on the front of the property and some additional approvals from state government to open the cemetery. The capacity of the cemetery for the specific community and the current needs, we're looking at about 26 additional years.
Right. So this new cemetery should effectively see 26 years added to our capacity as a broader network of cemeteries.
At current rates, yes.
At current rates. So no more. We can't increase the rate of people dying.
No.
It's got to stay the same.
We don't control death yet, so.
No, it's good. It's good. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Curtis.
Thanks, through you, Chair. So at the start, we listed some reasons why Council has taken on the responsibility of providing the ongoing service that was transferred from traditionally from churches and alike, and public health was one of them. There was a couple of others. What were they? I think it was it's public benefit, obviously. I guess I'm just trying to work out if we've really fleshed out perhaps the disincentivizing for the private sector we've created in having such a lower price compared to the private market, and whether that, what the implications of that are, and whether they still justify the original reason we took over.
I reckon that's a Kate question, or maybe even a Jodie question.
Through the chair,
of course.
Council's portion of the burials on the Gold Coast is 40%. A lot of families select cemetery location because they've got a history with the location. They have family buried there, or it's significant to them. Grandma lived in Southport, so we want to be buried at Southport.
Happy with that? The only motion is just that the presentation be noted, and so I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Gates, thank you. Any speakers for or against? That's great. I'll just close. Thank you, Chris, for telling us a bit about cemeteries. There's no doubt that cemeteries represent an important frontline service that council offers, but it's also something we don't really talk about a lot because it's about death, and it's, we're not very good in Western society of sometimes talking about death and difficult things. But frankly, it's wonderful to see. And having had a cemetery in my area, there's not just a sense of great parkland and a place to remember loved ones, but there's also a significant economic impact with having cemeteries in the city, and the idea that we celebrate life at a funeral, and that's a profound impact to our city as well. When we do that well, the community around those cemetery locations flourishes. And I can say, at least from Mudgeeraba's perspective, it's actually a big deal for us to be able to great place to remember people, but also it is a great economic impact in our local area. That's the end of that. All those in favour? That motion is carried. We have one final matter of business which isn't on the agenda. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Kate. And thanks, Jodie. I just wanted to introduce a new member of the team. So, Alex, did you want to come and do a spiel?
Thank you, Chair. So we do have a new member of our Environment, Heritage and Resilience team who's joined us this week. Andrew Saunders is the General Manager for Conservation. This branch is new. We've pulled this branch together because all of those teams reporting to Andrew are all working towards the same outcome. So this way we hope to get a more cohesive approach to how we go about conservation efforts in the Gold Coast. So over to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Alex. Lovely to meet you all, councillors. Just a bit about me, my background. I did a Masters in Environmental Management and have been working in the space for the last 16 to 17 years, both in the consulting industry but then also in-house roles, and most recently have been working at the Queensland Investment Corporation and Queensland Treasury Corporation. At QIC, I was focused on natural capital and really looking at how you can leverage environmental markets on commercial agricultural properties, but then also areas of large conservation estates, so things like carbon offsets, biodiversity offsets, and those types of mechanisms. So really excited to be part of the council, and I think there's a huge opportunity to bring some innovation to how the conservation estate is managed, and looking forward to working with all of you.
Thanks, Andrew. Just so for everyone who doesn't understand where that fits in, the General Manager of Conservation heads up all of our pest management team, which is kind of headed by Hadley Mills, all of Tim Robson's natural areas and conservation kind of area, which is all the managing the maintenance of our conservation estates, and also DJ McKenzie's team, which is the land acquisition program and all the stuff that interfaces with planning and things, strategic planning, priority species and koalas and all that. So Andrew's the new head of those three kind of arms, and you will have come across DJ if you've ever bought some land, and you will have come across Hadley if you've ever had a deer or a pest animal in your area. And Andrew's the boss of that area. Does anyone have any questions? All right. Thanks, Andrew. Lovely to meet you. Thanks, Alex. The meeting closed at 10, unless there's general business. No general business items. Meeting closed at